Are we trapped in eternal youth? This question resonates more deeply than it may initially appear. We live in an era that glorifies youth in every aspect: appearance, energy, freedom, and the absence of constraints. But this celebration of youth comes at a price. Behind the fascination with the new and the vigorous, there is a shadow we avoid facing: the fear of growing up, taking responsibility, and confronting reality as it is. Carl Jung, when discussing the unconscious aspects of the psyche, brought attention to the archetype of the Puer Aeternus, the eternal youth. He warned us about the risks of staying trapped in this psychological state, ignoring the call for maturation. For Jung, resisting growth is not only an individual choice, it is an existential risk. When we refuse to confront the more difficult aspects of our psyche, we are not just distancing ourselves from our potential, but also compromising our connection to life as a whole. This archetype is particularly relevant in our modern context. The difficulty in making commitments and taking responsibility, the quest for freedom that rejects any form of limit, and the attachment to unattainable ideals of youth create a crisis not only on an individual level but also on a cultural level. It is a paradox we face: the desire to remain free and creative like children versus the need to mature and find meaning through commitment and responsibility. Can we escape this trap? Can we look at the eternal youth within ourselves not as an obstacle, but as a vital part of our journey, something that can be integrated into our growth? This is the question that will guide us in this reflection. The term Puer Aeternus comes from Latin and means eternal youth. It has its roots in mythology, where divine figures personify eternal youth, the free spirit, and infinite potential. In Greek mythology, for example, we see Dionysus, the god of ecstasy, celebration, and transformation. Dionysus represents creative freedom, the breaking of barriers, and the refusal to be confined by society's rigid structures. He is both a force of renewal and a threat to the established order. Similarly, the archetype of the Puer Aeternus carries this paradox. It is simultaneously a source of inspiration and a risk of stagnation. Carl Jung brought this concept into the field of psychology, exploring how it manifests in our psyche. The Puer Aeternus is the part of us that rejects the boundaries of maturity, that wants to remain free, creative, and light, without the responsibilities that come with growth. This energy can be incredibly positive, as it is where we find our creativity, our ability to dream and imagine new worlds. But, like all archetypes, it has a shadow side. When we hold on to the eternal youth too tightly, we risk losing ourselves in fantasies and avoiding the challenges necessary for our growth. This archetype is like a thread running through the paradox of youth: the desire for boundless freedom versus the inevitable need to take responsibility in order to find meaning in life. Deep down, the Puer Aeternus reflects a universal dilemma. We want to fly, but we need roots. We want to explore, but we also crave stability. This tension accompanies us throughout our journey, shaping our choices and our challenges. Understanding the Puer Aeternus does not mean rejecting it or abandoning it, but learning to navigate its energies. It reminds us that there is value in keeping our spirit young and our imagination active, but it also challenges us to find ways to integrate these qualities into our growth. As Jung said, it is in the balance between opposites that we find true individuation, the process of becoming whole. The archetype of the Puer Aeternus is deeply rooted in our modern society. It manifests in behaviors and patterns that, at first glance, may seem harmless but reveal a disconnection from emotional maturity and a sense of responsibility. We live in an age where the eternal youth is not only accepted but often glorified, creating a scenario where procrastination and maturation is normalized. A clear example of this is procrastination in commitments. In many cases, we observe people delaying important decisions such as committing to a relationship, pursuing a career, or taking on financial responsibilities. The eternal youth fears commitment because it implies a loss of freedom, and freedom is what it values most. However, this procrastination often leads to a sense of emptiness and disconnection, as life cannot be fully lived without engagement. Another expression of the Puer Aeternus is the glorification of youth, particularly in social media and pop culture. We are bombarded with images that exalt youthful bodies, carefree lifestyles, and endless energy. This obsession with youth creates an illusion that aging and maturing are synonymous with losing relevance or value. It perpetuates the idea that we must cling to youth at all costs, even if that means avoiding emotional and spiritual growth. Digital escapism is perhaps one of the most prevalent manifestations of this archetype. Social media, video games, and the metaverse offer refuges where it is possible to escape the demands of the real world. These platforms allow people to live idealized versions of themselves, where reality is malleable and challenges are avoidable. While these tools can have their merits, they often become a trap, reinforcing the fear of facing the complexities of adult life. These dynamics reflect a larger existential crisis. Modern men and women struggle to find balance between freedom and responsibility. This dilemma is exacerbated by a culture that seems to offer no clear rites of passage into maturity, leaving many trapped in a state of eternal adolescence. Without these milestones, emotional maturation becomes an uncertain journey, marked by resistance and fear. The challenge, then, is to recognize how the Puer Aeternus manifests in our lives and culture and begin to question the narratives that sustain this glorification of eternal youth. Growth is not the enemy of freedom. It is the path to a more authentic freedom, rooted in meaning and fulfillment. While the archetype of the Puer Aeternus brings creativity, vitality, and the desire to explore, it also carries a dark side that, if ignored, can lead to stagnation and suffering. This shadow side reflects the consequences of resisting emotional and psychological maturation, keeping us trapped in patterns that limit our growth. One of the most striking characteristics of this shadow side is the resistance to emotional maturity. The Puer fears commitment because it seems like a threat to his freedom and spontaneity. However, avoiding emotional maturity creates superficial relationships and a sense of disconnection. Without the willingness to face the complexities of human relationships, the eternal youth often shies away from conflicts or challenges, preferring to remain in the safety of his comfort zone. Another aspect of the shadow side of the Puer Aeternus is excessive dependence on maternal or paternal figures, a trait known as the maternal complex. Jung described how the eternal youth may cling to the figure of the mother, whether literal or symbolic, seeking protection, validation, and continuous support. This dependence hinders the development of autonomy and the ability to face life's challenges. Instead of confronting the world with courage, the Puer often retreats, hoping that someone or something external will solve his problems. The difficulty in transforming creative ideas into concrete actions is also a reflection of this shadow side. The Puer is visionary, but his aversion to discipline and hard work often prevents him from realizing his potential. He may have great ideas and dreams, but lacks the structure needed to bring them into reality. This pattern generates frustration, as the creative energy of the archetype finds no expression in the real world, remaining as fantasy. Additionally, the Puer Aeternus is closely linked to the concept of regression, a mechanism that prevents us from advancing in the individuation process. Instead of facing the challenges and responsibilities of adult life, the eternal youth often retreats into a childlike state, where problems seem smaller and comfort is guaranteed. However, this regression prevents the full integration of the psyche, leaving the individual fragmented and unfulfilled. The shadow of the Puer Aeternus reminds us that, although the archetype brings many positive qualities, it also requires balance. We must recognize and work with these tendencies so that we can transcend the limitations of the eternal youth and open ourselves to the possibilities that growth and maturity offer. The archetype of the Puer Aeternus is not just an individual issue. It also manifests in our culture as a whole, reflecting profound and collective challenges. We live in a society that frequently promotes the escape from reality, celebrating the superficial, the instant, and the ephemeral, rather than valuing depth, commitment, and patience. This culture of the eternal youth not only shapes our personal choices but also impacts the social fabric in significant ways. One of the most visible reflections of this culture is the tendency to seek quick and easy solutions to complex problems. Instead of facing collective challenges, such as social inequalities, climate change, and political polarization, we often turn to distractions that allow us to avoid responsibility. Digital escapism and rampant consumerism are examples of this. Both offer a temporary escape, but leave fundamental issues unresolved, perpetuating cycles of dissatisfaction and alienation. Another significant impact is hyperindividualization, a phenomenon that promotes the idea that we are self-sufficient and disconnected from the collective. While individuality is an important achievement, an excessive focus on self can lead to narcissism, isolation, and the loss of a shared sense of purpose. This disconnection is reinforced by cultural narratives that prioritize youth and personal success over values like community, tradition, and commitment. In the workplace, the culture of the eternal youth manifests in behaviors that prioritize instant gratification over long-term growth. There is an increasing resistance to facing the challenges that come with professional maturity, such as persevering through difficult projects, handling constructive feedback, or taking on leadership positions that require sacrifice and responsibility. The result is a workforce that often lacks resilience and commitment. In relationships, the impact of the Puer Aeternus culture can be seen in patterns of superficiality and instability. The difficulty in making deep and lasting commitments leads to ephemeral connections, marked more by the search for instant validation than a genuine desire for mutual building. This dynamic reflects the fear of losing freedom, a fear that the eternal youth cannot overcome without letting go of his aversion to maturity. Carl Jung pointed out that these patterns are not just reflections of individual choices. They are rooted in the collective unconscious, the shared layer of our psyche that influences entire cultures. Ignoring this archetype in its collective dimension means losing sight of its impact on our society as a whole. Recognizing it is the first step to transforming it, both in our personal lives and in the world around us. The question that arises then is, are we ready to confront this culture of eternal youth and create a balance between freedom and responsibility, youth and maturity? The answer lies within each of us, but also in how we connect and collaborate as a collective. If the Puer Aeternus represents the energy of youth and potential, the archetype of the senex, or wise old man, brings the necessary balance so that we can mature and achieve psychological wholeness. The senex symbolizes maturity, patience, and wisdom gained over time. He is the counterpart to the eternal youth, bringing structure, discipline, and depth to counterbalance the impulsiveness and relentless quest for freedom of the pure. While the pure inspires us to dream, explore, and create, the senex teaches us to focus, build, and persevere. These energies are not opposites, but complementary. Together, they form a dynamic that is essential for individuation, the process described by Jung as the path to becoming whole. When we integrate the pure and the senex, we achieve a balance between the vitality of youth and the wisdom of maturity. However, it is easy to fall into extremes. A life dominated by the pure can be full of unrealized potential, marked by the evasion of responsibilities and the constant search for novelty. On the other hand, a life ruled solely by the senex can become rigid, overly controlled, and disconnected from creativity and joy. The true challenge lies in integrating these two forces, allowing the pure to inspire us and the senex to guide us. The wise old man also reminds us of the importance of time. We live in a culture that values immediacy, but the senex teaches that maturation is a process that cannot be rushed. He invites us to honor the natural rhythm of life, recognizing that growth and fulfillment require patience, commitment, and persistence. This perspective is essential for balancing the energy of the pure, who often grows impatient in the face of obstacles or delays. Integrating the senex does not mean abandoning youth, but rather learning to channel its energy in a productive and meaningful way. It is allowing the creative spirit of the pure to be sustained by the structure and wisdom of the senex. When these two archetypes work together, we become capable of facing challenges with courage and resilience, while also preserving our ability to dream and explore. This integration is not just an individual issue. On a collective level, we need leaders, institutions, and communities that embody this balance between youth and maturity. Only then can we build a future that values both innovation and wisdom, both freedom and responsibility. The path to psychological wholeness passes through this harmony. Ask yourself, how are the pure and the senex present in your life? Which one needs more attention and balance? Recognizing these energies is the first step to integrating them and living more fully. Throughout history, rites of passage have played a crucial role in the process of human maturation. They symbolize the transition from one phase of life to another, marking significant moments of growth and commitment to new responsibilities. In many traditional cultures, these rituals were essential stages that helped people leave behind childhood or adolescence and step into adulthood with clarity and purpose. Rites of passage were not just external ceremonies. They involved psychological and spiritual challenges that prepared the individual to face the complexities of life. Among indigenous peoples, for example, it was common for young people to be sent on solitary journeys into nature, where they faced their fears and connected with forces greater than themselves. In other cultures, these rituals included communal teachings, where the elders passed on accumulated wisdom to the younger generations. The goal was always the same: to help the person shed the dependencies of childhood and take their place in the community as a mature and responsible adult. Today, however, we live in a society that lacks clear and meaningful rites of passage. In their absence, many are trapped in the limbo of the eternal youth, without guidance on how to cross the threshold into maturity. Without these milestones, emotional and psychological maturation can feel like a confusing and solitary process, often postponed or avoided. Despite this, we can create our own modern rites of passage by adopting practices that help us reconnect with purpose and responsibility. Deep reflection is one such tool. Taking time to question who we are, what we want, and how we can contribute to the world can be a transformative act. Practices like meditation and reflective writing also help us access the unconscious, allowing us to explore the fears and desires that often shape our decisions without us realizing it. Dream work and shadow work, inspired by Jung's ideas, can also serve as a rite of passage. Our dreams often show us aspects of ourselves that we avoid confronting, while shadow work challenges us to integrate repressed traits to achieve wholeness. These practices require courage but also offer valuable insights into how to navigate the maturation journey. These modern rites don't need to be grand or formal. They can be incorporated into our daily routines, as long as we approach them with intention and respect. The important thing is to recognize that maturation doesn't happen automatically. It requires conscious effort and a willingness to face the unknown. Like in traditional rites, the journey is both internal and external, and its reward is a deeper sense of identity and purpose. Ask yourself, what rites can you create in your life to mark moments of growth? How can you transform everyday challenges into opportunities for maturation? By honoring these transitions, you not only grow as an individual but also contribute to the creation of a culture that values maturation as a sacred act. To integrate the Puer Aeternus healthily, practical tools must be adopted to balance its creative and free energy with maturity and responsibility. This integration doesn't happen automatically. It requires intention, discipline, and conscious effort. Fortunately, there are concrete steps you can take to bring the eternal youth archetype into the center of your journey of self-knowledge, without letting it take control of your psyche. The first step is to identify escapist behavior patterns. Ask yourself, where are you avoiding responsibility or postponing important decisions? Perhaps you will realize that there are aspects of your life, relationships, career, or personal growth, that you've been neglecting out of fear of failure or losing freedom. Recognizing these patterns is not an act of judgment but of awareness. Only when we see them clearly can we begin to transform them. The next step is to develop discipline to turn ideas into actions. The eternal youth is often a visionary, full of creative ideas and big dreams, but his scattered energy can make it difficult to bring these plans to fruition. Creating simple routines, setting achievable goals, and adopting habits that promote consistency are ways to channel the Puer's creativity into something concrete. This process doesn't have to be rigid. It can be seen as a dance between inspiration and execution, where each small accomplishment reinforces your confidence. Engaging in activities that require commitment and responsibility is another powerful way to work with the Puer. Whether it's a long-term project, a meaningful relationship, or work that demands dedication, these experiences teach the value of continuous effort and perseverance. They also help cultivate a sense of purpose, which is often absent in the fragmented energy of the eternal youth. For those who feel they are trapped in deeper patterns, seeking therapeutic help can be an essential tool. Working with a therapist, especially someone familiar with Jung's concepts, can help explore and heal maternal or paternal complexes that often fuel the Puer Aeternus. These complexes can be roots of dependency, fear of failure, or difficulty trusting in one's own ability to face adult life. Additionally, regular reflection practices can act as an anchor for integration. Keep a journal where you explore your thoughts, fears, and accomplishments. Ask yourself, which dreams have I yet to fulfill? What's stopping me from pursuing them? How can I take responsibility for my choices today? This habit creates a space for you to dialogue with the eternal youth within you, listening to its needs and guiding its energy toward something greater. By adopting these tools, you are not abandoning the youth represented by the Puer, but learning to work with it consciously. The freedom and creativity of the eternal youth remain, but are sustained by structure, responsibility, and a deeper purpose. It is in this balance that you will find true wholeness. Carl Jung warned us about the dangers of ignoring psychological development, especially in the context of the Puer Aeternus archetype. He saw this archetype not just as an individual issue, but as a reflection of a broader crisis affecting all of humanity. The inability to mature, to integrate the forces of the Puer and the senex, can lead to disastrous consequences, both personally and collectively. When we remain trapped in the eternal youth, we perpetuate cycles of escapism, irresponsibility, and disconnection. In our personal lives, this can manifest as a sense of drifting, lack of purpose, or repeating the same mistakes, unable to learn and grow. But when this dynamic expands to society as a whole, it creates deeper crises: collective alienation, environmental degradation, and even global conflicts. The relentless pursuit of freedom without limits, when not balanced by responsibility, can lead to a culture of destruction, both internally and externally. Jung believed that ignoring the process of maturation was an invitation to chaos. He observed that the repression of emotional and spiritual growth created tensions that eventually exploded in destructive ways. In his time, he saw the world wars as an example of this phenomenon, a reflection of the collective shadows of societies that had lost balance between material progress and spiritual development. Today we face similar challenges, though in different contexts. The environmental crisis, for example, can be seen as a direct consequence of the refusal to take collective responsibility for our actions. The destruction of ecosystems, rampant consumerism, and the neglect of the future are symptoms of a Puer Aeternus mindset on a global scale. A mindset that prioritizes immediate pleasure and gain, ignoring long-term consequences. On an emotional level, modern alienation also reflects this dynamic. We live in a hyperconnected world, yet we often feel disconnected from ourselves and others. This sense of emptiness is no coincidence. It is the result of avoiding the depths of our psyche, avoiding the hard work of integrating our shadows and maturing. Jung offers us a solution: individuation. This process is not just about personal growth, but also about the reconciliation between youth and maturity, between freedom and responsibility. When we seek the balance between the Puer and the senex, we create a model of life that not only benefits ourselves but also contributes to a healthier and more harmonious world. The crisis of humanity, as Jung reminded us, is a crisis of the psyche. And healing begins with each of us. By facing our own resistance to maturity and seeking to integrate the unconscious aspects of our psyche, we become agents of transformation, both in our lives and in the world around us. As we come to the end of this reflection, we are invited to consider the journey of maturation as a courageous and transformative adventure. The question remains: are we willing to leave the comfort of eternal youth to face the journey of maturation? This choice, though challenging, is essential to living fully and meaningfully. Integrating the Puer Aeternus does not mean rejecting youth or the qualities it represents. Instead, it is about using the creative, free, and dreamy energy of the eternal youth as a source of vitality that propels us in adulthood. This integration invites us to maintain the spirit of youth, but anchored in the wisdom and responsibility that maturity brings. It is a dance between the new and the old, the bold and the prudent, the explorer and the builder. This journey is deeply personal but also universal. Each of us carries within us the energies of the Puer and the senex, and the balance between them is what allows us to navigate life with purpose and authenticity. When we learn to integrate these forces, we become capable of facing challenges, building meaningful relationships, and contributing to the world in a unique and valuable way. So, how can we begin this journey? The answer lies in small steps. By reflecting on your patterns, cultivating practices of self-reflection, and seeking ways to balance freedom with responsibility, you begin to walk the path of individuation. And by doing so, you not only transform your own life but also inspire those around you to do the same. I invite you to reflect on how the eternal youth manifests in your life. What dreams have you been avoiding out of fear of failure? What responsibilities have you postponed for fear of losing freedom? Share your experiences in the comments. Your story may be the starting point for someone else's journey. If this message resonated with you, like this video and subscribe to the channel to continue exploring topics such as psychological growth and spirituality. Together, we can create a community that values both the creativity of youth and the wisdom of maturity, building a more balanced and meaningful future. Remember, maturation is not a loss but a gain. It allows us to carry the dreams of youth while building a life that reflects our true essence. Thank you for being part of this reflection, and see you at the next meeting.